Okay, so this next compilation of videos is going to be a man responding to a young man who seems like he's just spouting off random data that's not been vetted, and it's not particularly fresh data. You're going to see some analysis from me, because I actually speak to women and let women talk on my platforms daily. And then, if you're interested, I'll smack the young man's video on the tail end, on the very back end. If you want to see this guy talk, his is on the very back, and it's the guy, and he's speaking unfettered. I'm just letting him talk without interruption, so you can see it for yourself. But it's basically what the first guy will be speaking on. So you can cut it off after you hear me speak with my analysis. So go ahead, watch these videos, except if you don't want to watch the very last video, you don't have to. And then let me know what you think in the comment section. Like, comment, share.
According to a recent study, women have become unhappier as they've gained more rights.
So we're using the word recently pretty loosely here. I'd be willing to wager that part of this is that women today are probably more likely to be honest about their levels of happiness than they were, say, 50 years ago. And you might ask yourself, well, Yuval, that seems like a pretty bold claim. Where are you getting such information? Well, I got it from literally the exact same article. The author said there's a possibility that women were more direct about their levels of happiness than they used to be. This part I also found interesting, where it talks about how even though women now have the option to have a career, they still end up taking on the same amount of child labor. I have no choice. I have to work. I don't love my career. My babysitter is taking half my salary, and I'd rather bring up the children myself, but I can't afford to.
In fact, women are now unhappier than men.
All right, here's his little article. Remember what I said before about how part of it might be that women are now having to take care of children and have a professional life? Well, funnily enough, this one cites the exact same reason.
Women now believe the ideal lifestyle is working inside a cubicle in an office building and living in an overpriced apartment without any children. The highlight of their day is watching Netflix. These women constantly complain they can't find any good men, so—
Alright, I understand your point, but maybe you should have picked a different article to screen grab. This is an article about college students. Women being upset that a lot of men don't want to commit to an actual relationship. You know, it's just like the, college women that want boyfriends to commit to them is a completely separate conversation than the adult women who don't want children conversation. Like, there's not really any overlap.
So they spend their weekends at clubs making simps buy drinks for them.
I'm sorry, what the actual fuck is this video? Who are you? I implore you, sir, to try and meet a woman. There are many. I don't know if I've met a single woman that matches that description. I know they exist. I know they're real, but are they that common that you're citing them as a primary factor in women's decline in happiness?
So these women become resentful. They blame the patriarchy. And before they know it, they're 40 years old without any children. 1 in 5 go on antidepressants.
God damn, that's pretty crazy. You know what's even crazier is that the number is actually 1 in 4 for women over 60. I don't know if you know this, women over the age of 60 are not those childless millennial cat moms that you're talking about. They're boomers who are much more likely to have children and be housewives, which means there might be something else going on here contributing to this. This is why I think it's really important to always question anytime someone shows you, say, a change over a giant period of time, 40 years, and tries to attribute it to one thing. Because quite a lot has changed since 1969. So even if we take all of these studies at face value and assume they truly and accurately depict women's happiness, the idea of looking at that and going, oh, well, this is because women have rights now, is absolutely bonkers.
Here's something you probably didn't know. According to a recent study, women have become unhappier as they've gained more rights. In fact, women are now unhappier than men. But how does that make any sense? Well,
I always love it when men decide to speak to women's happiness when it is clear that they are barely listening to women. And the recent study that he's talking about was put out October 2008. Women's opinions and lives and happiness is probably in flux and is probably different than what was happening in 2008. So let's get into this research paper a little. I used to work for Enterprise Rent-A-Car, and when we would finish up with a rental, we would ask the people, "Are you completely satisfied with your service?" And then somebody would follow up. They might follow up with the customers and say, "Are you satisfied, completely satisfied, totally dissatisfied?" They ask a range of questions. Now, if someone were to ask me, "Am I unhappy, happy, meh, totally happy, love life, ecstatic?" How I answer might be different than what somebody else is answering. So my answers are not indicative of women in this country. It's just not. So what women are saying back in 2000 or 1970 or 1993, that doesn't pertain to me. Even my answers back in 2008 might not reflect my answers in 2023. So people need to understand how happiness and quality of life are on a continuum. And even what I might have felt in 1993 might not be reflective of my happiness in 2023. Anyways, so how they examine these thoughts on happiness. So he said, we examine men's and women's subjective well-being in the United States over the last 35 years. And mind you, this was put out in 2008. This survey is a nationally representative sample of 1,500 respondents each year from 1972 to 1993, and continues with around 3,000 respondents every second year from 1994 to 2004. How is this indicative of millions of people, and how is that indicative of women right now? Please explain. And it seems that even back in 2008 and even before, women were saying the same things. We need the men to help out with the household goods, with taking care of the kids and all of that good stuff. So maybe that is playing a part as well. Jump in the comments and tell me what you think. It is clear that men and women are having two separate conversations. Men are still pushing the narrative that women just all want to be married and having children. And women are having discussions talking about actual motherhood, talking about actual parenthood, and what it means to be a married single mother, what they have witnessed, and the reason why they are opting out. I do not believe that any men are actually listening to women. These were two comments under one of my most recent posts. This woman says, I watched all the women in my family being married single mothers and slaves to their husbands. The husbands literally came home and put up their feet like a king, while the wife was running around taking care of everyone's needs, including his. The wife barely had time to eat a meal or take care of herself. If she did and someone in the household was lacking something, there was hell to pay. Seeing that traumatized me as a small child, and I swore it would never happen to me, even though I and all the young girls around me were being groomed and programmed to be the next batch of single married mothers. Needless to say, I opted out of that hellish life. Nope, not I. And then the next woman says, I saw this time and time again at church during child dedication ceremonies. Dad and the kids look sharp, and all of the moms look like they've been run over by an 18-wheeler. Birth rates are declining globally. Look at these numbers, and these numbers are from the 1950s to 2021. Even countries that have not been touched by the feminist movement of the West are seeing declines in birth rates. You can look at this. The United States is down there at the very bottom in the corner. So we have a very low birth rate, but Uganda, is that a Western country? No, it's still on the decline. What about Afghanistan? You see that steep drop in 2021. You see all of these countries, despite where they started, are still dropping. And there is a reason. Women are not wanting to be brood mares. And people can frame it as being a feminist thing, but you cannot measure the happiness of a woman based on a happiness scale. If women were truly happy, we would be happy having these kids and running to get married. But marriage rates and childbirth rates are on the decline just about everywhere. Even countries that started off really high are dropping fairly low and fairly quickly. I'm going to move around a little bit so you guys can see these numbers, but you guys can take a screenshot for yourself and, compare to what people think. People's perception have not caught up to reality. And the reality is these birth rate numbers tell the story. They tell the story. Y'all jump in the comments, tell me what you think.
Here's something you probably didn't know. According to a recent study, women have become unhappier as they've gained more rights. In fact, women are now unhappier than men. But how does that make any sense? Well, take a look around. Women now believe the ideal lifestyle is working inside a cubicle in an office building and living in an overpriced apartment without any children. The highlight of their day is watching Netflix. These women constantly complain they can't find any good men, so they spend their weekends at clubs making simps buy drinks for them. But once these women hit 30 years old, something changes. They notice attractive men start paying less and less attention to them. A woman in her 30s is simply too old. So these women become resentful. They blame the patriarchy. And before they know it, they're 40 years old without any children. 1 in 5 go on antidepressants. This is happening to millions of women in America. So do you think these women have been told a lie?